Do we have any follow-up on that? Yes, we do. Andrew Salto. Sorry, you're muted.
Can you hear me now? Yes. I put the question in the what is wrong with probability as a measure of the number of worlds in which one is defined?
Oh, well, this is an old truism in probability theory. Probabilities are only equal to frequencies if the things in question are equally likely. So probability is frequency over things that are equally likely. What does equally likely mean? It means they have the same probability. What does probability mean? And so on. So that would lead to an infinite regress or to circularity or whatever. And it's worse than that in the case of like multiverse type reasoning, because you can easily make a model of a multiverse that doesn't obey quantum mechanics, where the frequencies are obviously not probabilities. So somewhere I wrote an example of this where you have there are a lot of copies of you all in identical prison cells, and you are also identical. You know, this is a non-quantum thought experiment, and then half of you do one thing and half of you do another, and then the second group, half of them does one thing and half of them does another, and then by probability the first group would have probability half, the second group have probability 1/4, third group have probability 1/4. But you can achieve the same physical effect by dividing into 3, in which case they should all have probability 1/3. So that's a world in which probability doesn't make sense. The fact that probability doesn't make sense in our world is, in my view, an amazing property of quantum theory. We had to work hard to prove that property. And if you change quantum theory just slightly, it no longer has that property.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, David. I guess we can still talk about evolution to change the topics a bit. A meme, as described in your book, is a theory or joke that survives through iterations, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, it's any idea that can be replicated, yes.
I guess it's a container for knowledge.
Yes, yes. So if it can be replicated to more than random degree, then it must contain, it can be said to contain knowledge.
Now memes are an widespread internet phenomenon.
By the way, what I just said is, and what you said is true of genes as well. It's true of any replicator.
You guessed the question. The question was, how are memes are related to genes?
So memes and genes are both replicators. So in that sense, the theory of replicators applies to both of them. And there are illuminating properties of both that both share, where each of them can tell us something about the other. But memes and genes have a radically different replication mechanism. Again, this is in my second book, The Beginning of Infinity, which you should all buy. The genes, when they replicate, they are copied blindly. So the only bottleneck to their exponential growth until they cover the entire universe, the only bottleneck is their actual effect on their holders, whether they increase or decrease the chance that that holder will survive will survive in time to replicate the meme, the gene, sorry. But a meme has got two bottlenecks. First, it must pass the test of being understood and replicated into the mind of a new holder. And then when the holder then executes it, it must do something, which like the gene. So that second bottleneck is the equivalent of the gene. The first bottleneck has no analog in genes. And that makes the natural history of memes radically different from that of genes. It means there are these two kinds of memes, that they have different replication strategies. Neither of them has the same replication strategy as a gene. There is no way for a meme to replicate itself by blind copying. Humans are incapable of blind copying anyway, but even if you try to engrave your meme on a stone obelisk, that obelisk will wear away unless somebody tends to it. And that is not true of genes. They can survive for billions of years, and because they are maintained by a blind error correction process. Whereas human memes have to be maintained by humans actually going out of their way to maintain them in every generation. That's another difference. Genes need not be enacted in every generation. If you don't, there's the example I gave, if you don't break your arm, you will still pass the genes for repairing broken arms onto your children. But if you don't enact your religion, then your children will never hear of it.
See, so that first bottleneck is the difference between a live replication and non-living replication, whereas a meme or your book is a container for knowledge. It replicates as a printing house copied it, and I acquired some knowledge through it. But if without me, it would not be able to replicate. The knowledge would go away, or without the readers and without the copiers.
Yes, without just printing it is blind replication. But really, that's not. If we look at generations, then if humans don't read the book, then almost all printed material will never be read again, nor enacted.
We have a question from Arjun.
Yes, it's a pleasure to be asking a question. So since we're on the concept of memes, I think what you write in the beginning of Infinity, which I have right here, is in chapter 15, it's like extremely profound what you come by with the idea of memes and the effect and implications on society. And you write a little about the inexplicit component of memes and ideas, which I thought was very interesting. But could you expand on that a little, since you write, in fact, all ideas have some inexplicit content, since even a knowledge of the meanings of the world, of words, is held largely inexplicitly in our minds. But just to sort of unpack that a little, maybe I'd love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, so first of all, the way that it couldn't be is that all knowledge is explicit. That couldn't happen, because if all knowledge were explicit, then the meaning of words, let's say I use a word like castle, and somebody doesn't know what a castle is, they would have to look in a dictionary. And then in that dictionary, a castle will be defined as a type of building which has the following properties, etc. But in order to, if the person doesn't know what building is or what a type is, then they have to look up the type. And it's obvious by a counting argument that a dictionary cannot possibly define, even in that straightforward sense, cannot possibly define every word in it, because there would have to be a root to every definition, and that root would itself be undefined. So how is it that inexplicit knowledge gets around that? Well, inexplicit knowledge doesn't have definitions. And in fact, as Karl Popper says, definitions are highly overrated. They're nearly always useless. We have knowledge encoded in language, but not as definitions. They're encoded as ideas expressed in language. And the way children learn language is by guessing what words and grammatical structures mean. And they when they guess wrong, they correct their guess. And when they guess right, they use the word and then perhaps correct it again. No two people end up with the same meanings of all the words. We, loosely speaking, we say that everybody who speaks English can understand each other, but that is not true. As soon as you get into any kind of detailed discussion of anything, you find that people have a different idea of what it means, like, to exist, or what it means to be true, or just basic things like that. People have radically different intuitive ideas about, which, if they are naive, they think that everyone else has them too and are just being obtuse. So I don't know if that answers your question. I mean, I've said, like, what can't happen and what does happen, but
yes, it does help. Thanks.
okay.
We have another question. Also, how are we doing on time, David? Do you think we could go on a bit more?
Yeah, up to you.
Okay, maybe like 30 more minutes, I guess, then.
Sure.
Finish up, maybe less. We have a question from Babak.
Hi, thanks. Hi again. So we have physical theories of what we understand now as physical theories of information, starting with thermodynamics and second law of thermodynamics, especially. But it seems to me that we are missing something there as a physical theory of knowledge, and how that might have a bearing on all of this. Do you have any thoughts on that to share?
Yeah, well, first of all, we already do have some quite deep knowledge about knowledge, namely epistemology, of which the best that I know of is Karl Popper's epistemology. It obviously is insufficient, since if it could tell us everything about knowledge and how it works, and so we would be able to use it to make an AGI. And I take it as axiomatic, if you like, that until we can make an AGI, there is a huge gap in our understanding of knowledge. Now, as a separate matter, I am kind of hoping that constructor theory will tell us something about knowledge, since knowledge is an abstract constructor. And that can't be an irrelevant fact. So I think there will be a constructor theory of knowledge eventually, which may or may not improve on Popper's theory of knowledge. But even if it does improve on it, I'm afraid I still think it won't be the full answer. Well, when I say the full answer, I mean it won't solve the problems that we have now. I mean, nothing is ever a full answer in the sense of solving all future problems. But I think that the various issues about knowledge, like the question of identity and the question of qualia and so on, knowledge, consciousness, free will, and so on, those, we have partial knowledge of those, especially knowledge of what is a bad theory about them. But we don't have an actual explanatory theory of them. And so we don't know that. It's a whole other vast area that we don't know about. I think it's a vast area. Maybe somebody will come up with a single equation that just solves it.